Welcome to the season ticket with your co-hosts Andrew and Jibril.
That's right. Let's get into it.
Yeah, we got a really good episode today for you. Um, Again, you're at the season ticket, your home team every game. All right. Let's start just by talking about we've got everyone's really thinking of the trade deadline. It's a really good one. I think we can start off if you want to start off with the Luka Doncic deal. I think that's kind of the most controversial and the most impactful of everything we've seen in terms of the overall impact on the league.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely shocking. Probably the most shocking trade in NBA history, just because it's two All NBA players, and there was really no talks about Luka being traded. Either one of them, especially Luka. Overall, I like the trade for both teams, especially because it seems like both teams, wanted the trade. But I think from the initial reaction, I think a lot of the Mavericks fan base, maybe overreacting. I mean, I get it though. Like, if Luka's your favorite player, from that perspective, but from a pure basketball perspective, they can't be too mad because when AD is on, I still think he's like he's arguably top 5 talent when he decides that he wants to be committed on the offensive end specifically, because he always brings it on defense. So I really like the move right now for Dallas, especially some of the other moves they made. We'll talk about later. And then for the Lakers, it's a really interesting move because they want to win now always. But taking AD away and adding Luka, you kind of wonder, are they pushing their clock back a little bit? But then, they made some moves also. So, man, overall, it's made for one of the most interesting trades in NBA history. And, I mean, we'll see. But that's my initial reaction. What about you?
I think just adding on to what you said, right? The cool thing is seeing both teams made additional trades after that showed where their headspace were. You saw then Quentin Grimes got flipped for Caleb Martin. So they're really looking for a 3 defensive players that they can pair with Kyrie and Clay to enable them to succeed. And I think that's good because Clay, he's not the same defender that he used to be. And you also look at where your window is. Clay being in his 30s, you've got Kyrie in his 30s. You can really maximize this. Now you're all on the same timeline outside of like some really impactful young guys like Derek Lively Jr. And then I look at it from the Lakers standpoint too and see they have their new face. I mean, rumors were swirling that LeBron was going to retire within a year or so. Like either if not this season, then the season after is where most people were expecting he was going to retire. And now you have your person in place for that. And I really don't think your team was set up to be built around Anthony Davis if you didn't have Luka there. So now you have a long-term vision for your franchise. I think that's where all the conspiracy stuff is, where they're saying all the owners got together and wanted to keep the Lakers relevant. Because in a sense, there really wasn't a clear picture for them to be relevant unless they were going to get Luka in free agency 2 years from now. So this kind of accelerates that timeline for them. And then they went out and they got him a rim runner similar to the ones that he's thrived with in Dallas. They went and got, I think, Mark Williams. Mark Williams, 9'9" standing reach. So
yeah, real, yeah.
I think it's a good move for both teams.
Yeah, and like you said, like I think the move was really about the timelines. Everybody's caught up in, oh, you traded him for him, and it's like, well, one team has Kyrie Irving who's 32, and the other team has 40-year-old LeBron James who, like you said, has kind of hinted that he got about 1 or 2 seasons left. So I think it's all about timelines, and I think LeBron is a guy who you can put almost any top talent around him. You don't need much. Make a few moves here and there afterwards, and you be in championship contention. So I think that's what they're banking on. They're like, look, if we can give up AD to get Luka back, a franchise piece we see in the future, we can put a few pieces around them and make a run at the title now.
Yeah.
I think, of course, the elephant in the room with the trade is why Dallas did it, and you know, I personally agree with the move and see why they did it. I'm not a fan of missed games due to, I mean, if you can't play, you can't play, but I really don't like when the top guys don't play consistently. Even when you play, if you ball out, you score 40. You know, if you're not there when it's time to, you know, I, it don't really. I don't know. It don't hold the same amount of weight. So them saying that they let him go because of habits and and things like that. You know, you can't blame them. I don't think you can blame them. You got a short window in which you can probably win a championship, even if you have a top talent like that. Nothing says you're gonna get another Kyrie and the players that you have from Washington and Lively and Gafford all in that window like that again. So you got to make move when you can. But him going to LA, I think, is the best thing for him, specifically going to play with LeBron and be next to LeBron. Because if what they're saying is true about Luka, being with LeBron James is going to be the best thing for his career. And it's a real smart move on the Lakers if they were, that's what they're thinking, obviously. But LeBron James's habits can do wonders for Luka and extend his career. Because me personally, I didn't think he was gonna have a long career on the trajectory he was on. But now I think he can have a good career in his 30s now, potentially. Now that he's under LeBron's wing.
Yeah, I agree with you. They're both very similar players. They play similar games, especially when you look at LeBron at this point of his career, where he doesn't have the same athleticism he had earlier in his career. They're both do-it-all point forwards who can be your point guard. They can play in the post. They can get you a bucket. I think, especially when you think of where Luka's clutch shooting is similar, how he can make those 3 pointers out of nowhere, despite when you look at his 3 point percentage. Kind of like how LeBron's become a shooter much more later in his career at this point. So he can definitely get those habits. And the cool thing is the team will be able to seamlessly run those same sets. Like you're gonna see a lot of you're always gonna see for the full 48 minutes, one of them will be on the floor. And really you just have to worry about late game when they have to actually interact with each other. At the beginning of the first quarter, beginning of the third quarter, and then late games, the only times you're really going to see them together.
Yeah. I'm specifically looking to see how Luka can improve off the ball. Like LeBron, everybody knows he likes to play with the ball in his hands, but he's good off the ball. He's very good at cutting and doing all that. Luka hasn't been that much interested in off the ball at this point, up until this point in his career. So I'm interested to see if he can improve playing off the ball, if he can become a better cutter. Because if he can, the team is going to be extremely dangerous. And then, of course, I'm interested to see how they hold up on the defensive end. It looks like it's going to be Luka, LeBron, Austin Reeves, kind of out the perimeter. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and you've got some interesting pieces you can line up with them. You've got Rui, you've got Vanderbilt, and you've got Finney Smith, all as those wing players that you can pair in there. And when you want a little bit more defense in the perimeter, you have Gabe Vincent who can come in. So they definitely have a pretty complete team now. Also, I think Jackson Hayes is just going to be a lot more valuable um with like a guy like Luca, and you're going to be running him in the same sets that you're going to be having for Mark Williams. So I think it should work. And it should be the best possible thing for both of their careers. I think now you almost change the goal for a guy like LeBron. Now it's no longer about how it's no longer just about winning another championship. It's about leaving something behind for the game. And what better way to finish it than like at least a deep run with Luka and the handing over the torch of one of the all-time great franchises. And you could say this is the moment where Luka put it all together, got in shape. And we'll probably see that more this offseason. I don't think we'll be able to see it right away, but seeing how it comes in next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. I mean, and then Dallas, they picked up one of the Martin twins. I don't know if it's Caleb or Cody.
It is Caleb. Yeah, Caleb.
I like how both of them play hard defense, hard nosed defense. They up in pace for the whole game. It's gonna be a tough unit in Dallas, especially on the defensive end. And I'm really looking forward to see Kyrie and Anthony Davis in the pick and roll.
And Max Christie already looks really good with them too. His last game, he had a really good last game with them. So
he had a great debut too.
Yep. So I think they have a really good team. They have a lot of wings they can throw at you. You got Kyrie, Clay, and then you have all these. You've got Max Christie, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dante Exum, Najee Marshall. Just a lot of different length and similar. Think of just the type of 3-and-D guys that you really want around a team.
Yeah, a lot of guys that play hard. Like all those guys that you mentioned, like they up in your face, and so that's going to be hard to deal with in the playoffs.
Yeah, you got plenty of centers for Davis to play with. You got Dwight Powell, you got Gafford, and then of course we know Lively's going to be back. That's going to be really refreshing for him.
Yeah,
and it also could be really good for Lively's development too.
Oh yeah. All right. So we kick it to the De'Aaron Fox trade.
Yeah.
So he goes to San Antonio. Levine goes to Sacramento. The Spurs send Zach Collins to Chicago.
Yeah.
With this trade, talk about the Bulls in a second, but I like this trade for the Spurs. It's a home run for the Spurs, in my opinion. They were able to keep Devin Vassell, Stephon Castle, Keldon Johnson. They kept their whole core and Jeremy Sochan. They kept all of them and was able to get De'Aaron Fox. To me, they might have the biggest net gain in this trade deadline. They look really good in that first game last night. It just looked like a natural fit. It looked like De'Aaron Fox enjoys playing with everybody who there. It looks comfortable. It didn't seem like he was trying to find his role. It all seems perfect. They're gonna run the ball through Wemby. Devin Vassell is the natural scorer. Castle gonna get in where he fit in with his cutting and his hustle. And then when they need this steady hand of De'Aaron Fox, he's gonna be able to come through. He was timely in that debut game and hit some shots. And then they got the veteran Chris Paul. So considering what they gave up to get him, that was crazy. That was a good steal. And then the Bulls just seemed like, I was excited because it seemed like they were picking a direction. And we'll get on that. But, them sending Levine to Sacramento, what do you think about the trade, though?
I like getting your first round pick back is always nice, especially when you're trying to pick a direction. Because a lot of times teams find it hard to pick a direction when they don't have their own firsts. So now it's like, okay, we can play our young guys and we can just try and get the best pick we can and maybe get in on this flag rush.
About Chicago.
Yeah, speaking about Chicago, I think they already have a lot of point guards. I think they probably tried to move Trey Jones. 'Cause right now, I think they're starting like 4 point guards essentially in the center. But Zach Collins, they can take a flyer on him. Kevin Herter, they can take a flyer on him. Or he hasn't gotten rerouted anywhere, has he?
I heard they were trying to reroute all three of them,
Yeah, but it seems
which is
like
which I'm like, are they picking a direction or not? They
uh,
re-signed Lonzo to an extension,
mm-hmm.
so I mean,
But
Chicago seems like right now they're just destined to be the facilitator of trades.
if
But
they're getting picks out of it, that's fine. Like if they can eventually reroute each of them in the off season and get decent picks for them, then that'd be okay. Um,
yeah, yeah,
I think for the Kings, one of the weird things about this trade, there's a 2025 first round pick from the Hornets that's probably not going to convey. It is lottery protected, and then it turns into 2 second round picks. But then they have a 2027 first round pick from the Spurs and a 2031 first round pick from the Timberwolves. So really, they got 2 firsts and 5 seconds from this deal, and that should actually be pretty nice. I think they'll get something there, and because they have Zach LaVine, they'll still be able to stay competitive. I think even looking at Zach LaVine, right? He, when healthy, is an all star. He's a 25 points per game guy. He's played on an Olympic team before. You're able to reinvent yourselves as well because it gives you more shooting to put around Sabonis. And when you have a guy like DeMar, having more shooting around him will be really valuable as well. So in a sense, it might fit better because now you have shooting all across the board when you have Keegan Murray, Sabonis, Levine, and then you've still got a dominant scorer. Maybe not to the same degree, but Malik Monk is a freak athlete, and he can definitely. It's not like you're having a massive drop off when you think of the amount, like just how talented some of the players they have are. I mean, Malik Monk is a sixth man of the year contender. Um, so in a sense, they're in a good spot. And then I think for the Spurs, now they really have that. The big thing is they were targeting either Fox or Trey Young, is what most people thought for these past few years to pair with him. And they got the defensive one. You know, you got the guy that can be, you don't have to worry about covering for him defensively. And his wife is from San Antonio. You know, he's probably going to stay. You have a true building block for the future. Somebody who's going to make things easier and also get a chance to soak up so much from a Hall of Famer in Chris Paul. Similar to what we saw Chris Paul do, at least for Eric Bledsoe early in his career. We saw him, of course, do that with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I do think it's all in all good move. I think if they can gel at the right time, they're a team to look out for because Wemby might be he's probably a top 10 player now. He could be a top 5 player next year. His ceiling is impossible to gauge. And Castle looks like he's an amazing player as well. So I think they're learning really fast, and I
yeah.
expect them to make some noise.
People sleep on Devin Vassell,
Mm-hmm.
but like he might be their closer, him and Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the
You,
Kings, man, it was. I think it's a good business move, from a management standpoint. They stay, like you said, competitive or entertaining, however you want to look at it. I don't think it's gonna make them like real contenders, but it's the best. It's like one of the best things you can do when you got a superstar saying he's pretty much gonna leave. Like you said, try to recoup some picks and get a player that can at least keep
mm-hmm.
fans coming in the meantime. So
Yeah, and you look at how their roster is constructed, right? They
mhm.
were a two-man team. It it's debatable who was the bigger star or who had the biggest impact on their team between Fox and Sabonis.
Yeah,
So it's hard to rebuild when you already have two cornerstones and one wants to leave, and you have already a lot of young players and guys like Keegan Murray. Um, and one of the hardest things to think about is this team has been in the gutter for a long time. Sacramento before now hasn't been relevant since Chris Webber. So it's a hard ask to say a team that's went through all of that to try and go into a full reset, sell off all of your assets. So I think they made the right decision. I think they can get things back on track. And Zach LaVine really has a bounce back year, which it seems like he's having. You might not get much of a drop off. I mean, what really was the difference between prime De'Aaron Fox and prime Zach LaVine? Like, would you rate them as in different like playing fields, or would you say they're pretty similar?
De'Aaron Fox and Zach LaVine.
Yeah, at each of their peaks.
Zach LaVine is the better scorer, and you could even, I mean, he's a better scorer, but De'Aaron Fox is one of those players that you need to navigate deep into the playoffs. You're gonna need a guard or a wing who can handle off ball, dribble. I mean, handle the ball in the pick and roll, shoot off the dribble, or set shot. And then they can't, they got to play some defense. And I like the defense part for him. So drop off. I mean, at their best, they were what, fourth in the West.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just don't think they're going to really get. I don't think they're going to get to the semifinals. I really don't think they'll make the playoffs. That's all I mean by that. But you mean the move though? You can't, like you said, like the guy's leaving. So I mean, I think they did what they had to do.
Well, I've got a good follow-up question for you then. So you said you need a guard or a wing that can get a bucket, that can score off the dribble. One of the things, you might even say they had too much of that this season, because that's what Malik Monk likes to do. That's what, of course, Fox does at an extremely good level. And then that's what you're getting from DeMar DeRozan. Like having a guy that can score without the ball, adding into that, who can also score with the ball of his hands, but it kind of enables you to get more out of DeMar DeRozan and Malik Monk. It might be a better fit long term.
Yeah, I think with the Kings is their top end is just not good enough. I don't think, even when Fox was there, I don't think Fox and Sabonis together are good enough to take a team. Fox is now with a better running mate and a better team. So that's why now he's going to be relevant, I think, in the deep playoffs. I don't think Sabonis and Fox, a lot of teams just don't have that high enough top end. And I think that's the case. And as the GMs and the owners, they got to ride it out, right? Because they're getting them in the draft and they got to see. They're already paying them the money. They got to figure out if it's going to work. But I think the time just came where, I mean, Fox was figuring it out for himself. This ain't going to work. So, it's out. He was leaving. So, but the Kings, I just don't think the top end is there. I like LaVine, but even him, DeRozan, and Sabonis together, I don't think that three is good enough to navigate deep in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I'm not expecting it to. They have Keegan Murray, though, who's a really, really good shooter. Sabonis is a do-it-all guy, really good shooter. So they're the type of team that maybe as they get more experience, things are possible, but I agree. When you look at some of the top teams and what separates the top teams in the West, they're still missing something.
Yeah. Yep. Who we got? Oh, yeah, of course. Mr. Jimmy Butler gets his wish. Man, of course, I thought he would get moved once they suspended him indefinitely. But I am surprised that he's going to Golden State. I'm specifically surprised that Golden State wanted him. I kind of thought they were going to be more culture aware with the Draymond Green stuff. And I'm just surprised. But, I mean, I guess they're kind of desperate to get back in the mix. But, basketball-wise, it's going to be interesting. A lot of people are saying, a lot of basketball heads, I should say, are worried about the spacing and everything. I think Steph Curry is kind of like LeBron James in the sense where they don't need much, and they can also adapt to pretty much any situation. And I think Steph Curry, even though Draymond isn't a knockdown three-point shooter, they can figure it out. Like, he Draymond and that coaching staff, I think, can figure it out. But what's you like about it is, Jimmy Butler, when he is playing, he is that competitor you need to that dog to push you through the playoffs. And Steph is one of, it's rare you get that talent with that type of mentality. He also is that of that ilk. People like him and Giannis. So you got those two minds on the same team with Draymond Green. That's what's cool about it. I don't think they're very deep. They're very, the roster is very thin. But and then on the flip side, Wiggins going there. I like Wiggins with Hero. I know you like that. I like the Heat now. I think the Heat really just need a free agent to walk through the door, and they'll be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. So there's a few things that are interesting here, right? Steph Curry, I think a lot of this is on Buddy Hield, and then a lot of this is on how much you get from your young guys, Pazinski, Moody, and Kaminga. I think this team, Draymond and Jimmy are going to be the heart of a core defense, especially if you can get good contributions from Looney, Jackson Davis, and Kaminga along with it. Of course, they're going to get good perimeter defense from Gary Payton. But the starting lineup does have some issues in terms of shooting. That's probably the one thing they're going to have to try and figure out. I think overall they should be fine. They have a lot of smart players, and I think Jimmy's gonna do a really good job of cutting. Jimmy's gonna do a lot of the same thing as Draymond does in terms of taking some of the playmaking off of Curry's hands to allow him to just be able to get his catch and shoot threes as well, and just doing a lot of the little things. And there's gonna be games that he takes over in the playoffs, and that's where they're gonna get their value.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't the ideal team in terms of the shooting that you really want to spread to me with. But that two-man game, I think of Curry and Jimmy is going to be really, really nice. You think of kind of, it makes you think of the best version of the Warriors, right? Which was that we have this great offense around Steph and Clay, and now instead you have this great offense around guys like Steph and Hield. And when it breaks down, we give the ball to Durant to go get a bucket. Jimmy can get to the free throw line. He might not always get you a bucket, but Jimmy can get you to the free throw line in those instances and still find a way to make an impact. So I do think he definitely raises their ceiling. I think the big thing to keep an eye on, Jimmy and Draymond are both very passionate players. They, you're not gonna have to worry about certain things. Like Jimmy's not gonna get into it with the refs. That's not his nature. The Jimmy will hold players accountable the same way Draymond will hold players accountable. And as long as they can do that respectfully with each other, they should be fine. Jimmy's also quick to challenge coaches too. So, I mean, Jimmy has literally almost got into a fist fight with Spo and had to get broken up by Udonis Haslem. Spo is fiery. Riley's fiery. There are people that are okay and are willing to deal with that type of thing. Jimmy challenged Brett Brown and basically back in Philly. And then he had the same coach for the last two, or for his first two, so that wasn't necessarily the same. But Jimmy will challenge Kerr. He will challenge Kerr at times. And the question is how they deal with that. Is it done respectfully? Is it done in a way? And I think Kerr is the type of guy that can manage the personalities and kind of knows what to expect. If Jimmy sees something, he's going to be like, this is why I'm thinking, this is why. He might not always say that the most delicately either. But you have all-around competitors. You have past champions. I think they'll be able to figure it out.
You mentioned him taking the responsibility off. That's the most underrated part about this trade, in my opinion, is Jimmy Butler is finally back in his natural best role, which is number 2.
Mm-hmm.
And he really hasn't been there since, he was coming up in Chicago, or maybe you could say Philadelphia. But even then, he was asked to do a lot. But people forget Jimmy Butler kind of played himself into this max player role. But he was a guy that came up off the bench, a defender first, and trained himself up and to be this offensive player. So has he hit big shots? Of course. But if you look at his most impactful plays, even if when they came in the clutch, they came from him stealing the ball or him cutting to the rim or like the inbounds play at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
All these break plays, kind of like D Wade, these are perfect for a secondary role. Like you said, when the offense breaks down and Curry, the dribble gets broken down and Jimmy's able to cut from the opposite wing. That's his role, like that D Wade in Miami type of role,
Exactly.
not the guy who the defense is focused on in the half court set and clutch moments of the playoffs. So now that he's able to kind of sit back and kind of creep through and get his with most of the eyes on Steph, I think it's going to be maybe the most dangerous version of Jimmy we've seen in a while.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think being in that natural role when you could rely on a guy like Embiid to get his points, or when you could rely on a guy like Rose to get his points and take away that and allow him to kind of be free. He also does make open threes at better clip than people think. He's going to be able to get those whenever he wants. I'd rather him take those than I would rather Draymond take those. So he'll find ways to contribute. I think it should be good. The idea is how much time do they have to get back into the running, and then when can they get their other guys healthy, like Kuminga and everybody?
Right. And
No,
they don't have a large margin of error now.
Nah, not at all. They have to figure this out really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Spo and Kerr are probably talking about this a lot right now, seeing as their Team USA relationship. I'm sure they're both picking each other's brains about what the players they each got from this deal can do. So, looking at this too, from the Miami Heat perspective, I think this is an amazing deal. One of the things, B-Ball Index considers the top 10 perimeter isolation defenders. You have number 1, Dyson Daniels. Number 2, Bilal Coulibaly. Number 3, Dort. 4, Davion Mitchell. Go a little bit farther down, you see at number 8, you see Andrew Wiggins. We just got 2 of the top perimeter defenders, which in a team where you start Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson, that's very valuable. That means now we can have lineups where we have Davion Mitchell in there with Tyler Hero or with Duncan, providing more defense. We have Andrew Wiggins, Bam Adebayo, and Khalil Ware, 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan, probably 6'8", 6'9" with a 7-foot wingspan, then 7 feet with a 7'5" wingspan. We have that. We have those trees in there. We have the guys that can guard on the perimeter, and then having the guys for the zone too, with Davion Mitchell being that point of attack defender in our zones that we like to run. We gained a lot of athleticism with Andrew Wiggins. The way we use Ware right now on lobs, and now Bam at the 4 is getting more lobs. There's going to be a lot of lobs to Wiggins, similar to how you saw back when we had Derrick Jones Jr. Or even we had Gerald Green too. So it's not like Spo hasn't used this from his wings before. You also can make some really tall defensive lineups, right? You could put like Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, Haywood Highsmith, Bam Adebayo, Khalil Ware if you really need to stop. It just creates a lot more options. Also, same timeline. Andrew Wiggins being 29, right? Much closer in age to Bam Adebayo. I think it's like 26 or 27. Then you've got Tyler Hero at 25. You see our timelines are starting to match better. One of the big things we got out of this also that I think people are, I really think Kyle Anderson will be good for us. I don't know how much people watch Nikola Jovic or really think about what Bam does, but you're talking about a 6'8", 6'10" point forward style player who likes to handle the rock, who can get triple doubles. A guy that can pass, a guy that can score and can rebound. Kyle Anderson has done that for the Spurs. He's that type of player. He'll fit right in. Spelling our guys is a key rotation piece. I think he'll end up doing good on nights where we just need a little bit of a spark or someone's hurt filling in. And then I think that the other thing I'm really looking forward to from this is we get that first round pick from the Warriors, top 10 protected, which means even if it fails, they're not going to be bad enough to fall into the top 10. But if they're a play-in team, or if they're somewhere like they're probably going to barely squeeze in, we have a top 20 first round pick most likely from that in a loaded draft. So that's, I think, something really valuable. And I think also from a cap space, now we are underneath the first apron, which means we can get into the buyout market, and we also can go from here. Um, we're also really in a good space for 2026, that free agency. Um, Andrew Wiggins, Andrew Wiggins, Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Hero will be our only major contracts during that time, and then all of our young players on small deals. So we can add another 40 to $50 million player during that time too. And Andrew Wiggins, I mean, honestly, he's next year's going to be a contract year from him. So we're going to get massive value. Just I don't know if people actually follow Andrew Wiggins on contract years. He is a contract year powerhouse. I'm very excited to see that he's going to grow. He's grown at every stop, especially when he's playing for things that matter. He did really well. He's a big reason why they won that championship. He had excellent defense on Jason Tatum. Put Jaylen Brown into the torture chamber. So I think that he'll fit in perfectly here. And think about it, like Jimmy. When you really think about when Jimmy became Jimmy, a lot of it was like later in his career too. Like he really started getting that full persona after really in Miami. Like Miami's where he really like fully came into his own. And a little bit, we saw little sparks of it in. I think little sparks of like that. Mm-hmm.
I mean, in Chicago, he started hitting game winners.
Yeah, for
In
sure.
Miami, to your point, Miami, they were playoff games. He had a lot of classic playoff moments,
Mm-hmm.
specifically late playoff games, because Miami was in those Eastern Conference Finals,
Yeah.
and of course they made the finals twice, which the Bulls haven't been, the Wolves
Mm-hmm.
haven't been, Sixers haven't been. So yeah, he
Yeah.
definitely has more memorable moments in Miami.
And I think Wiggins has a chance to do that here too. He's still young. He'll have
Yeah,
good habits. We'll give him those good habits that he's been learning from being with the Warriors. And
yeah,
he's with two All Star. We have like three guys that are like somewhere in the All Star spectrum with Tyler Hero, Andrew Wiggins, Bam Adebayo. Khalil Ware is the favorite for the Rookie of the Year. 40%
yeah,
three guy, 15 points, 10 rebounds a game type of guy, which allows Bam to be a 20 point, uh, 10, 12 rebound guy. Then you get your 25 points from Tyler Hero. Andrew Wiggins is going to fit right in. I'd say this trade probably puts us into like the 4 or 5 seed conversation. We have the matchups that we, I think, can at least get to the second or third round.
yeah. Yep, yep. All right. Let's get through a couple of these. We got
Mm-hmm.
Kuzma and Middleton swapping spots. Um, Damn, Chris Middleton, he's kind of. We'll see what happens
Giannis is ruthless.
with
Giannis is ruthless. That's all I gotta say about it. He
You really,
shipped.
you really think it was?
He
I
proved the
mean,
deal.
they probably. You think it was like that? Like they brought it to him, and it was like, well, we
Well,
got to see what he
well,
thinks.
well, no, they said they brought it to him. He said he signed off on it. The thing is, think about it. He's kind of pushed them into trading Drew Holiday for Dame Lillard. I get this one a little bit more, and I get that one, but he just wants to win. He's gonna do anything to win. He's not loyal to his boys. He's like, we can be friends off the court. I can fly to Milwaukee whenever.
I like how Kuzma should fit in with the Bucks. I'm not sure if this is a move that's really gonna take them over the top though,
Mm-hmm.
um, because Middleton, when healthy, he provides what you kind of need. What we were talking about in the late playoffs moments.
Mm.
A guy who can navigate the pick and roll, and I know they got Dame Lillard, and Dame Lillard has made some crazy late game shots in the playoffs. Sometimes he can get sped up in that pick and roll. You know, Middleton, it's like you can't slow him up. He's one of those guys that goes at his own pace.
Mm-hmm.
He can hit the mid range and threes. So I wonder about Milwaukee. When they get in these late game moments, it's gonna be interesting. But you know, I like Kuzma in there with the length of Giannis and Brook Lopez makes them like crazy athletic and
Mm.
like just a defensive team, crazy defensive team with a lot of size.
Yeah. One of the things I really like for Kuzma, he's someone that can also slide down to the four. Right now, they
Mhm.
already have a lack of front court depth. I think that that's definitely going to help. I think that we know he's been on a championship team before. He's played with Hall of Fame players before. He's going to be able to do his role, and I think he's going to start playing winning basketball again. He can defend. I think he'll be a nice complementary piece. I think if you look at this deal in addition to um, getting, I think KJ, pull this up. In
They
addition to again the
yeah,
Kevin Porter Jr., I think if
yeah,
you look at these two deals together, um, sometimes you make moves around the edges. Kyle Kuzma, right? Chris Middleton was no longer able to start for you because of the injuries. He just had lost a lot. So getting Kuzma, getting Kevin Porter Jr. The thing is, they didn't have a lot of really good role players before, and now they have more role players. And I think when you have two stars, if you can at least get it to fit a little bit better, you have a chance. You just need to be able to enable these guys to have the supporting cast to let them be stars and win playoff series for you.
yeah. Okay. And we had Ingram going from New Orleans to Toronto. My
Mm-hmm.
boy, he who got the nickname Soldier Slim when he was down there in New Orleans. And I mean, man, I like Ingram. He's one of my favorite players that came up around that time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he got moved out of LA and he got caught up in the Anthony Davis trade. And the move for him I thought was good because he seemed like a low key guy who would do better in a smaller market. And he seemed like he liked that part about New Orleans versus LA. And they made some real strides. This team, when they had Zion and Alvarado, they had Dyson Daniels, they had Najee Marshall. That team was really on a roll, and then the
Mm-hmm.
injuries devastated them. I think they were number one in the West for like a large part of the season. So it was already one of those what ifs. But going to Toronto, I'm excited to see him alongside Scotty Barnes, another
Mm-hmm.
player I like. Um, Toronto, low key, I'm surprised that their record is what it is. RJ Barrett was still looking for him to make that step, but
Mm-hmm.
Scott alongside Brandon Ingram
And he's
should be
having a
good.
good season too. RJ is right now 22.7 rebounds, 6 assists again.
Yeah. So if he can get some range, consistent range, Grady Dick is coming up and like
Mm-hmm.
pause. He's playing well, but yeah, Toronto should be all right. New Orleans, man, like I said, they had Najee Marshall, who's having a great year in Dallas. They
Mm-hmm.
had Dyson Daniels, who might be having his career year, might be a candidate for most improved. Like you said, he's
Mm-hmm.
number one isolation defender in the NBA. They had those pieces. And so now it's like they're kind of reshaping, resetting. Just
Mm-hmm.
a crazy year for them. They by far the most injured team in this first half. Um, I mean, they still got some pieces, but it's definitely moving their clock back when you consider, you know,
It's
um, Zion's impending
mm-hmm.
free agency. and all that. But yeah,
It's definitely tricky, right? When you look at something like this, because in particular, their team had so much talent, like so many just really good role players where you aren't sure what they're gonna become. And I think Denver did a good job. Like when you look at some of those Denver teams before they made their big run and win their championship, they had guys on their team that they just couldn't find minutes for. And it's like you have to start trying to consolidate those into things that are a little bit bigger. So I like the idea of turning Dyson Daniels into, I think he's hurt right now, but Deontay Murray. It's like if you can consolidate those in something that's a little bit better, that kind of fits the timeline that they were looking for more with Zion. You already have the emergence of Trey Murphy. I think Trey Murphy would win a All Star at some point at the way he's playing. Um, so it's like you still have very key pieces with this team. And the only thing that makes me sad about this is I know they're really hoping to turn Ingram into a quality center. So they did draft their draft pick. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Missy. Um, he's been pretty good for them at center. It's just how can they turn some of their pieces into a little bit more? And they're also trying to keep that flexibility, right? This isn't. It's a small market team. They're not gonna be a second apron team unless they are really, really winning. Um, so you have to decide what pieces aren't going to be there when you're making your big run. You just made the move to kind of build around that Murray McCollum backcourt. You can't pay everybody. Letting go of Ingram so you can afford everyone else. That might be a decent idea when you have guys like Trey Murphy who are able to fill in at that position too. Uh,
yeah. I think what it came down to is they just had too many guys
yep.
who were playing very well. Like you said, they got Murphy and they got Alvarado and they got McCullum. They just had too many guys, and I think it was a case of Dyson Daniels and Najee Marshall were playing so well, they were just due for a larger contract, and they just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't keep it.
Exactly.
But yeah, to think they had all those guys, and all they needed was a healthy Zion and Ingram. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of
It's really
kind
sad
of
when you
cool.
think about it, right? Like you think
Yeah,
of just certain what if stories in basketball. They're not the same what if as maybe the Oklahoma City Thunder back in the day, but this is one of these
right.
teams we're gonna go back and look at where all these guys wound up. I'm kind of like I think the similar what if to this team would be the Minnesota Timberwolves, that original Thibs Minnesota Timberwolves team, where you
Was it?
had the original Minnesota Timberwolves team before they made the trade for Jimmy, where you had Zach Levine, you had Zach Levine, Andrew Wiggins, and Carl Anthony Towns. And you look at what they all were able to do later. Like you look at what Carl Anthony Towns is doing now in New York. You look at how Andrew Wiggins was able to contribute to a championship team. You look at how Zach Levine, I mean, these are all like all stars who have averaged 22, 25 points per game. And they just never fit together in a way where you could do those things. Probably because they had Ryan Saunders as coach and culture. This is a similar thing too. I mean, of course, you have some max level amazing talents too, but those were also big blue chippers. They were definitely all blue chippers coming out, and they just
They
weren't
were
able to
blue
have them all
chippers.
ready at the right time.
Yeah, they were guys who I think just weren't destined to be the number one guy on championship teams. They had the high lottery picks, but they need to be paired with some other elite players, all of them individually. I think.
Uh,
Like
I
we
think
see
it's more
Town,
their personalities.
we
Towns has
see
the
Town. One of his things is in late games. He's doing it less in New York because
Mhm.
Brunson has the ball in his hands a lot. But one of the things we see with Towns a lot is late in games. He makes bad fouls and
Mhm.
he also has bad turnovers. Specifically, trying to drive the ball, he'll either draw a charge or he'll turn the ball over. So, like I said, you need that steady hand. Wiggins and Levine, like I told you said about Levine, I don't think he can be that guy. Wiggins is the real interesting case,
Mm-hmm.
because we've seen flashes of it, but altogether at that time, I don't think it was going to work out. But each of them in a different spot. Wiggins with Curry, Towns with Brunson.
Mm-hmm.
They're like you said, they're talent that's good enough to help somebody win a championship.
Mm-hmm.
I just like we said, like with the Kings, you might get three of them together and think, hey, this is it, but it don't turn out to be a championship core.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing here. Like Ingram is going to have lesser stakes. He's going to be a good scorer. He's just going to be asked to score. He's going to be able. His build is Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes is who's supposed to, in theory, become the alpha, and Ingram is one of the co-star supplementary players. You've got
Yeah,
Zion is going to have to find somewhere where he can go other unless it's here. He's likely going to have a second life, hopefully getting into better shape in his next contract somewhere in a better culture where there's people who are going to hold him accountable. I mean, we saw CJ McCollum try and do it when he first arrived. We saw JJ Redick try and do it when he first arrived. Similar to Karl Anthony Towns. Like Karl Anthony Towns has the talent to be a top five player in the NBA. He has all of the tools to, just like Zion. I mean, him and Zion have. Huh?
yeah.
It's in here. Yeah,
All
it's in here.
decision making for him. Yeah, he
And
has that
whereas
with
for Zion, it's his eating
his habits.
habits. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah. So with these cores, you just hope they're healthy enough to make a run when they're together.
Mm-hmm.
Is my big point there.
No, I
Um,
completely agree with you.
yeah. So a little bit of a smaller deal that I'm interested in, if he can stay healthy, is Bogdanovic is going
Mm-hmm.
to LA to the Clippers. Bogdanovic, long list of injury history.
Mm-hmm.
But man, when he's playing like this summer, we got to see him at his best. And for a lot of these international players, it seems like they just turn up during the international time and during
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
man, if we could see a FIBA version of Bogdan on that Clipper team, that would be crazy.
Mm.
Um, yeah, there was some other smaller deals. Schroeder, I think he's going to end up in Detroit. That's going to make them,
No, I
I
think
think,
that's going to be really good for them. Just having
a champ.
another ball handler so you don't have that same on off when you have Cade come out. Um,
Yeah.
or have someone come in so Cade doesn't have to be on the ball.
Hmm.
Want to see. Also, just another guy. I mean, Ivy ideally will become that player too, but just having more ball handling is not going to hurt them. And have someone who can really set up their big men. They have some really good big men. I think it should be healthy for Durant. Uh,
Yeah. We got DeAndre Hunter is
that's going
on
to
the
be a
move.
huge deal.
I think it's a really good move for the Cavs. I think it's one of the best moves of the deadline.
Might be the most impactful move of the deadline when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
And
The Fox
they're,
and the Hunter deal, yeah.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
especially because they're right there. Um,
they're right
yeah,
there. You're talking about someone, the guy that spot he would be taking is Dean Wade and Max Strus. Like that's the lineup spot, that three spot that they've been trying to fill for so long. You got someone who can play defense, who can score. Um, I think it just completes their balance a little bit more.
all right. With that, let's talk about some of the winners and losers of the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go first. Far as winners, I kind of hinted at it. I think the Spurs are big winners
Mm-hmm.
here. Um, I mean, you can make an argument about each trade, but when it comes to net gain, I think the Spurs really, really knocked it out the park, giving up a couple of guys who weren't playing that much, not to give up Castle, Vassell, Sochan,
Yeah,
Johnson,
or even their
and get
best picks.
yeah, and then get De'Aaron Fox. I think they're my winners of the trade. We talk about net gain and impact. For the losers, I got two. For one, Chicago. I'm gonna be hard on Chicago, but I'm gonna say Chicago because once again, I felt like they had some pieces that were attractive to some teams that they kind of sat on. Um, and then it looks like they're choosing a direction by sending Levine away, but then the same day they said they're rerouting the three guys they got, and then they're re-signing Lonzo Ball to a 3-year deal. So, I guess they're going to keep Kobe White now and Josh Giddey. So they're just a team that always just feels in the middle of the road. They're doing one transaction to look like they're trying to gain assets, which they did get some picks. Then they make some moves where it looks like they're trying to acquire veterans. But so Chicago and then real quick, Denver. Denver, they didn't make any moves, which is why I consider them kind of losers here because I felt like they should have made a move for depth. Jokic is playing probably his best season, which is crazy. But usage is really high, and you start to think about wear and tear on him.
Especially
And
as a big man.
Not just him, but Jamal Murray is a guy who he tends to step it up late in the season, like in the spring, but at the same time, he's a guy that can get injured. And so I'm just looking at their depth, and they don't look too deep on that bench once you get past like Brown and everything. So they're a team that I thought would make a move, but they didn't. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they end up. They kind of ran out of gas against Minnesota last year, so be interesting.
I would say for my winners, I think Miami for just making the best of a rough situation and still coming out with good flexibility, a good draft pick, and young defensive players that fit their identity. I think that was really good for them. I think Milwaukee for at least bringing in a good role player that should help them for the run, and making the most out of what they just turning and what was becoming a net negative because he just couldn't depend on Middleton being there into something that at least can come into your lineup and has high potential. Also inject some youth into that team. I think Cleveland's probably the biggest winner for shoring up, like making a meaningful change, not being comfortable being the one seed and still realizing we have weaknesses and we're going to do the best we can to fix those recent weaknesses in the process. Um, I'm definitely think the Lakers for just picking focusing on their future. This team, the LeBron, Anthony Davis build just really didn't have. There were just things missing. It was too hard of a fit to try and build your team around a 40-year-old and have that be like the focus. So now you have this 2 timeline thing. Considering his timeline ends in like 1 or 2 years, I think that was really smart for them. I have the Clippers in neutral, or not Clippers. The Mavericks is neutral. I think the Mavericks do win in the sense that if they spend the most time with these guys, if they really think that Luka wasn't the identity that they wanted, and they also think that there's a chance Luka could have ended up like Zion or like Embiid. Doesn't matter how great Embiid's a top 2 player in the NBA, but he's not healthy enough for you to consistently win.
You gotta say now though. We don't know what's gonna happen. Who you think won now?
I would say, all right, right now, I definitely think Miami won. I think Cleveland won, and I think like one more team. At least for the immediate, I'll say that the Clippers won, and I'll say that the teams that I think really lost, I have Phoenix because Phoenix made all this drama, alienated some of their players. There's not a lot that you can figure out. from it. I'd say, oh, the Spurs. I'm sorry, the Spurs definitely won. So I think a lot of teams really won. Like a lot of teams got themselves into the mix that weren't in the mix before. The Spurs are now in the mix. The Warriors are now in the mix. The Heat at least have a direction and some clarity. Milwaukee is like teams are making. There's not teams that necessarily messed up. All the teams that were buyers bought
Yeah,
well. I think
yeah,
every buyer bought for what they were actually trying to buy.
yeah.
Um, and the teams that were sellers, if anything, the teams that were sellers were the ones who lost. And the only reason why I would say that they typically lost is because they got less value than they could have gotten at other times. Like Luka probably could have fetched more in different instances, but they got what they needed. I'd say that same thing. I know Jimmy could have fetched more, but they got the best out of it. So all in all, I think this was really good. This was just good examples of business by most of
Yeah,
these teams.
yeah.
Uh,
And with them, and like with the Luka and the Davis trade, people people got to think it's about timelines and leverage.
mm-hmm.
So if their timeline fits better over here, and then at the negotiation table when he called up Rob Pelinka, did he make it seem like he wanted Davis more than he needed Luka?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's reports saying that they wanted to talk to Luka, but he didn't want them to talk to Luka.
Exactly.
No. So it's about leverage. It's about timeline. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely the most interesting trade deadline. And part of the reason it's been so interesting is because of the standings, which we about to go into now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Actually, let's touch the buyout market right quick. You
Mm-hmm.
got something on that?
Yeah. Oh, and I want to make one aside too. It's really interesting how the NFL decided to enter in on Christmas with the Christmas games on Netflix, and the
Yeah,
NBA is like, "Okay, we got you. We're gonna have our trade deadline right before the Super Bowl."
right.
Mm-hmm.
Super Bowl in a few days, and the
Mm-hmm.
NBA dominating the headline.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. Um, and
Yeah, with
that.
the buyout market, like
Mm-hmm.
who do you think are like the biggest candidates to, as far as players, to enter
Yep.
the buyout market?
I think the biggest one is Ben Simmons. I think Ben Simmons is definitely the biggest one on the market. I think yes, at 40 million he is terrible, but for 2 million, he's everything that you need. A guy that has all star talent that can at least at this stage get to the rim, um, make get a ton of people open and get easy baskets for your team, and then play good defense. That's like perfect situation, and you can get him into teams where he's actually around good culture. Some other guys I'd want to see get bought out. Steph Curry. Steph Curry is who I really want to see get bought out, and go to a contender. Just that shooting. Um, Bruce Brown's a big one that I know people are talking about. From
Yeah,
what I'm hearing, Denver might be trying to finagle getting him in the buyout market, seeing as he
yeah,
was their best role player.
yeah. They should have kept him and KCP if they. I know they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't have kept anybody, but those two were some dogs for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Brogdon's might end up in the Brogdon and Middleton actually could end up in the buyout market. I don't think Middleton will because I just don't see a way where Middleton declines his player option for next year. 30 million. It'd be an interesting way to buy out because he has a $30 million player option next year. But Malcolm Brogdon, I think, can really help a team right now. Um,
we shall see. I mean, because it's a lot of. I mean, we're about to talk about the playoff pictures. There's a lot of teams who are a piece away from leapfrogging another team.
yep. This is where the second apron's really going to hurt too, because if you're over the first apron, you can't get expensive buyout players.
Mm-hmm. All right, with the playoff picture. with all those trades in mind, we look at the playoff picture and we see the wild, wild west.
That's a good one.
It is wild. Sixth place is the LA Clippers. They are a mere 7 games ahead of 13th place Portland Trailblazers.
Mm-hmm.
Just 7 games. Just 4 games separate the Clippers. 4 losses separate the Clippers at 6 from the Spurs at 12. 4 losses. So, yeah, we got, 12, it looks like contenders. Now, I will say this. I think the Kings are going to drop up out of there, leaving the Warriors and the Spurs. So it's going to be a fight for San Antonio, Golden State, Phoenix, Dallas, and Minnesota may.
I can see Minnesota falling out. Honestly, I can see Phoenix. If Phoenix isn't mentally tough, I can see Phoenix falling out. They made another good move, at least getting some role players that better fit with their team. But they've got a lot they've got to figure out. I mean, you almost have this idea is that, like, the team, was it the players that were trying to force Bradley Beal out? Like, I mean, there's so many questions now. Do they blame him for not getting Jimmy Butler? Like, there's a lot of other things in terms of, like, a relationship, being able to trust your teammates. You know, you're going to war with these guys.
Right.
There's some things that can be at play there.
Yeah, you're right about that because they said it was supposed to be locker room issues, locker room friction.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, how could that be if it's the GMs and the front office doing the trades? But like you said, Bill was a big part of this trade deadline, even though he didn't get traded.
Mm-hmm. Then Durant found his name in the trade deadline. He didn't even want to be traded.
Mm-hmm. And looking at this is interesting because a couple of the veteran teams are down towards the bottom, so it won't matter as much if they don't get home court.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about Golden State and Phoenix. Them just getting in should be interesting, but you got the young guns at the top: Oklahoma City, Phoenix. Memphis and Houston. Do you think they stay up there?
I think young teams tend to do better in the regular season. They get up for these games more. They are younger. Like, they're more excited about the regular season.
Do
So
you think
they
they
play
keep
for home court.
Do you think do you think OKC, Memphis, and Houston keep I'll just say, do you think those 3 teams finish in the top 4?
Yeah, I definitely think those 3 teams finish in the top 4. I'm thinking Oklahoma
Memphis,
City is not going to fall out of the top 4. They have such a high lead. I don't
yes.
see why. I don't know what Memphis would need to do in order to not fall out. Like, I mean, they have such a lead already for the top 4. I could see. I just don't see a way that Houston would. I'm just not sure what the other teams would need to do to be able to overtake them. You're talking about runs that they would have to go on, them going on a winning streak, and then one of these teams going on a losing streak.
Well, the Nuggets and the Lakers are only 1 loss behind Houston and 3 losses behind Memphis. So Houston's on a 4-game losing streak right now. So Denver and LA could easily overtake them, and they could find themselves in 5th place really quickly. It's going to be interesting.
That's true. I think for the Lakers are going to have to kind of piece together their identity very fast.
Yeah.
And they also have a first-year head coach too. So I think it's very possible. I think they have enough talent to be able to do it. But piecing all that together right off the top, we'll see. I definitely would love to see him do it. I think Denver's going to be good, especially Denver's 7 of their last 3. You see the Lakers are 8 of their last 2. For the Lakers, it's got to be weird. You're 8 of the last 2, then you're completely changing the entire formula. Not just that. Right. Remember, Dalton Connect got traded, too.
Right. Right. Dalton Connect leaving. Yeah, it's crazy, 8-2. and you trade one of the key, probably the most,
Important
you
part.
know, LeBron's been crazy consistent this year, but definitely their most consistent two-way player. So yeah, very interesting trade. But when it's all said and done, I think the Spurs are going to make it. If I had to bet, I'd say Golden State is going to make it. Think, like I said, Sacramento might fall up out of there. Man, it's going to come down to Minnesota, Phoenix, and Golden State probably. Man.
Then when you also think about how the play-in works, right? So if the play-in is Golden State and San Antonio, let's just say Golden State and San Antonio get there and the Kings fall out. Or say just the Kings and Phoenix fall out, for example. One of those teams still wouldn't make it if they could only make it to 9 and 10, you know?
Right.
Um,
Right.
So if we have four great teams make it to 7, 8, 9, 10, only two of them are going to have any impact on the bracket. And like we'll see, like when people saw with the Miami Heat, this all kind of really started because Jimmy Butler got hurt in the play-in game one of the play-in tournament, like in the first quarter. We were stomping Philly, and then he steps on, I think Kelly Oubre's foot, and that is it. So there's just more room to get, and you're really in that March Madness college basketball where it's just one game, anything can happen.
Yeah. I kind of feel like, man, home court probably don't even matter. I
No,
think
not
about
really.
I look at a team like Minnesota, and I'm like, man, does it even matter if they get home court advantage? I don't think so. They're gonna be in just as much trouble if they get those first two games in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Also depends on who they're. It's all matchups too. Like some of these
Yeah,
teams, Minnesota is just gonna be naturally better than others, and that's where all the coaching comes into play. Like the playoffs, like you said, it's a different beast. And that's part of the reason why home court doesn't matter as much too. You're playing the same team so much, and the coaching is so good. You're reading the scouting report. It's really how well does your team execute against this other team. Now, I think I agree when like Kenny and Shaq always say, you know, home court matters because your role players would play better at home. It's the other guys. The home court matters for the other guys. What gets them all
mm,
amped up to play. But for these veteran teams, they're used to that. They'll play at home. They'll play on the road. So home court really is going to matter for those younger teams like Oklahoma City, Memphis, Houston. They need home court in order to have a chance.
yeah. I mean, of those three young teams, I think it's most important for Houston.
Mm-hmm.
They really play like last year. They had, I think, one of the best home records in the league, and once again, they were terrible on the road though last year, but they're good on the road now
They're
this
much
year.
better on the road. Look at Memphis though. Memphis is amazing at home, and they're
Yeah,
just okay on the road.
yeah. Minnesota also almost 500, but Minnesota's 500 at home too. So
Yeah, Minnesota's better on the road than at home right now.
yeah. In the East, I think the top 5 or 6 might even be set.
Um,
I think in the East, we're definitely. I mean, obviously, we're looking at Philadelphia and whether or not they can bust in there. Embiid looks like he's coming back. If he's healthy, should be no doubt that Philadelphia makes the
yeah,
play-in situation. I see the Bulls falling out.
I see Atlanta falling out without Jalen Johnson and DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah,
I think
I see it.
Toronto gets that spot.
Yeah, looking at Toronto's moves they made, and really, they've been playing a lot better lately.
6-4 their last 10.
Yeah, and I think they lost their last two, but before that, it was even
Mm.
better than their last.
Mm.
They got some guys playing a lot better. Scotty Barnes is, back hopefully, and then
Mm-hmm.
Ingram coming back. Yeah, so I think Toronto can make a run, Philly, and then yeah, Chicago and Atlanta falling out of there. The Magic on a pretty big slide. Ooh, they've lost 8 of their last 10, but I think they'll still make it.
I really wanted to see them make a move. I know they were talking about making a move for a scoring guard.
I would have liked it too. I think they got a lot of pieces they could have afforded to move off of. I believe like Jonathan Isaac,
Mm.
for example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, Orlando's losing right now to the Nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you have a team around two really good wing forwards, and you have some great defensive players and role players around them.
Mm-hmm.
Just give them. I think they'll be all right. They just have to kind of piece it together. They had
Yeah.
they lost that consistency because two of them, their two stars, both missed a lot of time. So it's
Yeah.
gonna take
Same.
them some time to get it all together.
Yeah, they had the same oblique injury.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting.
But they both can handle the ball, pick and roll. So shoot
Mm-hmm.
off the when you look at that, Cleveland's at the top. I like Cleveland as a team. I think they've done almost as good a job as you can do,
Mm-hmm.
given their players. When it's all said and done, I don't think their top end is going to be good enough to beat Boston in a 7-game series. New York, I like that team because I like players like Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby and Josh Hart.
Mm-hmm. I think
I don't know. That's going to be interesting. I think it might come down to Knicks and Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Bucks, I don't know if they get there. I'm gonna say Celtics and Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals as of right now.
I think that's why that Boston deal was so important, right? Or not Boston, the Cleveland deal is so important. They got DeAndre Hunter,
Mm-hmm.
who is someone you can then put on one of those two wins. Because you can put Mobley on somebody, but now you have that other guy you can put on them. And I think the other thing, as long as they stay in the one seed, they have
Mm-hmm.
the best chance of making it. Because as long as they stay there, Boston or New York's gonna have to take the other out. So
Mm-hmm.
as long as they can stay number one, they're on the best side of the bracket.
That's true. Yeah, Hunter. Yeah, I think what it's gonna come down to for Cleveland when they're on the brink of elimination, we're gonna be looking at them, and it's gonna be can uh, Donovan Mitchell or Garland score? Can they get those tough buckets? It's 3 minutes to go in the fourth. Can they keep scoring?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen him. I know he can go off for 50, but can he do that in the playoffs? That's what it's going to
Besides
come
the
down
bubble.
to. Against
Besides
that
the
New
bubble.
York defense, yeah, or that Boston defense. Can they do it in those moments?
Mhm. I think
Are they
that's a
going
really
to
good
keep?
point.
Is Mobley going to be involved in the game in Game 4 of a playoff series, Game 5, the same way he is now? That'd be interesting. In the West, right now, I'm gonna say OKC. And this is crazy. It's hard to do the West, man. It's
So
hard.
it's hard because we
I'm
don't
gonna,
know who's going to be there. So,
I'm gonna say OKC and Dallas.
mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say OKC and Dallas. Hopefully, Dallas doesn't come in as the 8 seed,
Mm-hmm.
and play on first round. But my guess is that Dallas overtakes enough teams to where they're not, eighth, and they can get there.
Yeah. It's so hard to be able to talk myself into any of these teams right now until I know a little bit more. I really
Yeah,
think that you could tell me that any one
yeah,
of these top 12 teams outside maybe like Sacramento is
yeah,
representing the West in the NBA Finals, and I probably wouldn't be surprised. So,
yep. It's one of those. Who knows what's gonna happen now?
yeah, you have that mix. I think the only ones that would really surprise me would be like Houston. I'd be surprised if Houston did it. Uh, I'm just surprised if Memphis did it only because they're so young. But
Mm,
they do have like a mega to an extent in John Morant when he's online, and they have a lot of really good players around him, good defense. Um, yeah, I think all in all, just packed. I would like to see Oklahoma City. I think Oklahoma City comes out in most cases.
Mm.
Just seeing the way Shay's playing out of his mind. They're good at every position, and then now they're bringing Chet Holmgren back. They're gonna run away with the 1 seed. I think both. I think Cleveland and Oklahoma City. I mean, they both got their trade deadline acquisition because they got Chet back. That's their deadline acquisition. I think both these teams just run away with it. Now, the actual how it looks in the playoff picture, um, Oklahoma City versus my guess is that's so hard to say. Um, Probably wants to see what New York. I think New York has such great defense. And they have such great defense. It really depends. It's Carl Anthony Towns. I want to see how Carl Anthony Towns does as they integrate Mitchell Robinson back in. So, that's probably a thing I want to keep my eye on. They just can defend anybody. They can defend anybody. They have Jalen Brunson who proved you can beat them, but he's still gonna give you 40. Like I remember when we beat them, he still kept giving us 40.
Trading baskets.
Yeah. So it's like now he has a guy like Carl Anthony Towns there with them, and they've got the guys to lock you up. So that'd be the team that I would expect. And the Knicks need one. The Knicks need a wreck. They need to be back in the finals. Good for basketball.
Yeah. Little micro stat that's interesting. Denver is still Denver in the clutch. They're 4-0 in overtime games this year. Thunder have not played in any overtime games yet. Neither has Memphis. Boston is 3-2 in overtime games. New York 2-0, and Cleveland hasn't played an overtime game yet. Just interesting.
How's Miami in clutch games? So like every Miami game is a clutch game. We're probably like 10-10 or something.
In overtime games, they're 2-3 this season.
We should be. Look at how bad some of those collapses were. Oh my gosh, Sacramento, we just missed so many free throws.
Miami and Boston.
The timeout. Did you see the timeout?
Miami game.
Bo called a timeout when we didn't have a timeout. I got it. I'll never forget that moment. I understand, Spo. I'd be pissed too. You let someone get a lob on a game winner with like less than a second left. I'd be mad too.
He can afford to have that one. The Heat and the Celtics have played the most overtime games this season with 5 each.
And see, I think that's something to keep in mind, though. Like when I look at what makes the Chiefs so dangerous, right? The Chiefs have had to go through every type of win you possibly can. The Celtics having a lot of close games like that, that's the thing that you look out for because those are the teams that haven't been rattled.
That's why I brought it up because the young teams, Cleveland, OKC, and Memphis have played 0 overtime games this year so far.
It's because they take care of business. But you look at their record, right? When you're 41-10, you're 40-9. You're taking care of business in almost all of your games. There's not very many teams that are going to put you in a position to have those.
Yeah, which is good for the regular season. But
you need those in the playoffs.
Right. What's going to happen when you get punched in the mouth, as Mike Tyson says. Yes, sir.
Any upcoming matches you're looking forward to? Any debut games you got or any circle on your calendar?
Yeah, man. AD's debut is set to be against Houston, the in-state rivals, who are, as we mentioned, third in the conference. So Dallas playing Houston, I think, on Saturday. I'm looking forward to that.
And Segun gonna be healthy? Segun's healthy for that?
Yeah, I believe he's gonna play.
That's one though. I'm really looking forward to seeing how. I mean, we still don't get to see the full bill with Lively, but I'm really looking to see how Gafford unlocks him, and then what his 2-man game is gonna be like with Kyrie.
And actually, they said Luka's supposed to debut same day against the Pacers. So the Lakers tip off like an hour after Dallas and Houston tips off Saturday. So that's the ones I'm looking at that night. That same night, Memphis and OKC are playing. So
Golden State You think Golden State Chicago? You think Jimmy would play against Chicago?
Are you talking about as a first game?
Yeah, 'cause I mean, he's good to go. He hasn't been. He's been sitting at home. I'm sure he's in shape, amped up on coffee right now. He's probably looking at plays. So my
That
guess is
should
he
be.
can go right in and play right away. I bet you if the
Should.
deal was official, he'd be playing tonight.
I mean, yeah, it should be his first game.
Yeah, I know. They say Andrew Wiggins is supposed to debut on Monday against Boston. That's gonna be one to look out for. How well he matches up defensively against Tatum. Like we'll see if the defense won't be fully installed yet, but see how these pieces go and actually going against a team like that. That's what I'm really looking forward to. Um, what is Ingram? Part of it's figuring out when Ingram's actually gonna be healthy. I think he comes back the next week or two. But seeing when
Yeah.
I really want to see his debut, see if they actually have it in them. But the good thing about this is, we have All Star Weekend coming up. There's going to be a time for all these guys to watch film and get integrated. So coming out of All Star Weekend, these teams should be good to go. I think that's also the beauty of doing it before All Star Weekend now. Now these guys are going to have a full week to kind of rest, meet their new teammates, hang out with their teammates, and figure out, just from a film standpoint, even if they're not practicing, what they're going to need to do to be able to contribute.
Yeah. Got a few good games Saturday. Houston, Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Also got OKC, Memphis. You got Boston at New York and Denver at Phoenix.
Boston, New York's going to be Cleveland. Cleveland, Minnesota on Monday. That might be a good. We want to see when's like a good game where we could actually see DeAndre Hunter. I think Hunter. They'd probably put Hunter on Ant-Man, so that could be a pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty much taking what's his name spot?
Dean Wade or Max Strus.
No,
Oh, you talking about
they
Isaac Okoro?
they
Oh,
traded
Karis
yeah,
LeVert. Yeah, yeah,
Karis
yeah,
LeVert.
yeah. Mm-hmm. LeVert had such a promising start to his career. He has had a
Yeah,
lot of injuries early in his career.
yeah, like Oladipo.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. And we'll be back with a football episode coming up before the
Yes,
Super Bowl. That's
special
something to look
Super
out
Bowl.
for. Mm-hmm. We hear that people want to hear us talk football.
Hey, I'm ready.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yes, sir.
All right. And thank you for coming in into the season ticket. I'm one of your co-hosts, Andrew, and this is your other co-host, Jibril. We hope you guys have a blessed day.